Okay, so again, good morning. So today we're going to be graphing f of x equals ax to the second power. So really what we're doing is we're going to learn quadratic functions today. So there are three types of function forms that we need to know. So let's go over those. So skip a line and then right here we're going to write quadratic function forms. So there's three of them. The first one is called standard form. So we've seen this before, but it's going to start with f of x equals, because now we're talking about functions, right? Equations. So f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. This is actually what we've been seeing, right? Recently, when we've been factoring, we've been seeing standard form this way. The second type of function, the function form, is called vertex form. This is brand new to us, and we're going to talk about this just a little bit today. So when it's in vertex form, it will look like f of x equals a, open parentheses, x minus h, close parentheses, to the second power, plus k. And the third function form is called factored form. And this is when it looks like f of x equals a, open parentheses, x minus m, close parentheses, open parentheses, x minus p. So those are the three quadratic function forms. Now let's talk about how a quadratic function looks, okay? What we're going to do below this is we're going to draw a coordinate plane. That's supposed to be a straight line. My goodness. Let me try that again. I'm really trying here. Okay, so a quadratic function, let's look at the standard form, the ax squared plus bx plus c. And so this would be a quadratic function. And if I were to graph, let's say I graphed f of x equals x squared. This is known as the parent quadratic function. This is the parent function, okay? Okay. So if we were to graph this, then it would be a U shape, and it goes through the origin. And it has arrows because it keeps going on and on and on forever. This is called a parabola. Parabolas can be facing upwards or it could be facing downwards. And when it's facing downwards, it looks like a frown. So let's talk about some characteristics of the parabola. The first thing is the very lowest point of this parabola, the point that intersects right here, is called the vertex. The vertex can be any point. It doesn't always have to be at 0, 0. So the vertex can be found, or the vertex is known as H and K, okay? And I'm going to explain those two later on. And then we have what's called the line of symmetry. The line of symmetry would be where, the axis of symmetry is like the line of symmetry. So it's when since your parabola is symmetrical, if you were to cut it in half vertically, then that line where it cuts it in half is called the axis of symmetry. So in this case, if I cut it in half, it would actually go straight down the middle through the vertex. And this dotted line that I drew, that would be known as the axis of symmetry. And the axis of symmetry is always x equals. And then it will always be x equals whatever number that the line goes through on the x-axis. So here it cuts through the 0 on the x-axis, so you would say x equals 0 in this case, okay? The other thing we need to know is that the vertex, going back to the vertex, there's two types of vertex, okay? You could have a maximum or a minimum. Depending on how the parabola looks, right? So in this case, do you think this point would be called a maximum or would it be called a minimum? Do you see how, is it the highest or is it the lowest point? What do you guys think? Tell me in the chat box. Would it be considered the maximum or minimum? What do you think? Tell me in the chat box. Yeah, that's right. It is the minimum. It's the lowest point, yes. So here in this picture, the vertex is the lowest point, so it's called the minimum. Now, if it was the other way, where the parabola was facing downwards and looked like a frown, then your highest point would be the vertex, and that would be called the maximum. So it just depends on how the picture looks. That would determine, is it called a minimum or is it called a maximum, okay? Okay, I want to show you some examples of what this looks like. So I want you to, you're going to open up on Google Classroom. I'm going to send to you a file on PDF, and you're going to open it so you can use read write on it. If your read write doesn't work, you're going to have to use Cami or Doc Hub, okay, to write on it. So let me send that to you right now. Okay, guys, here we go. Understanding quadratic functions. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the shape, which we know now it's called a parabola. When it's a U shape, it's called a parabola. And so there's two types. There's the upwards parabola and the parabola that is facing downwards, okay? So with this table here, we're going to plot the points so we can see the shape of the parabola. So go ahead and plot these points for the upwards and then plot the points for the parabola facing downwards. Do that now. Okay, I see in the chat box that you're saying you can't annotate. If you are unable to do it with read write, you can open it as Cami or Doc Hub and annotate that way, okay? Okay, so for the first one, I put my points, and now we're going to draw a smooth curve through all the points. Try to draw as smooth of a curve as you can, okay? Okay, so now plot the second one. Excuse me. So we have a parabola that's facing upwards and a parabola that's facing downwards. Okay, are there any questions on plotting the points and drawing the parabolas? Yes, you can open it on your iPad instead. That's fine. Okay. The second thing is we're going to talk about the axis of symmetry. So parabolas are symmetric about a central line called the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry cuts the parabola in half vertically through the equation of the form x equals, and then it's going to be a number. Okay, whatever that number is that it goes through the x-axis. Okay, so here's some examples of how that's going to look. The first one here, if I cut this parabola in half vertically, then I'm going to draw a dotted line right down where the fold would be. This is going to be our axis of symmetry. Now you want to see, where does the line go through on the x-axis? So here it goes through 0. So your axis of symmetry would be x equals 0. Okay, let's look at the next one. On the next one, if we were to fold this parabola in half vertically, we're going to draw the line of symmetry through where the fold goes. Here's our axis of symmetry. So x equals what? Where does it go through on the x-axis? Tell me in the chat box. Very good, guys. X equals -2. That's right. Okay, now let's draw our axis of symmetry. Fold this in half vertically. Draw your dotted line. Okay, what is our axis of symmetry? X equals what? Very good, guys. That's right. X equals 3. Are there any questions on axis of symmetry? Okay, so there's also a little shortcut to find the axis of symmetry. If you do not have the parabola graphed in front of you, you can actually find out the axis of symmetry by looking at the equation and solving it yourself. So the axis of symmetry, you use the formula x equals -b over 2a. This only works and only finds the x value of your axis of symmetry, and it only works if you see the equation in standard form. Oops. Let's see. So notice how we're going to have to substitute b, and we have to substitute a into the equation to find out our axis of symmetry. So whatever those numbers are, you plug it into this fraction and you get your x value. So pretty cool. That's if you needed to know the axis of symmetry and you don't have the graph in front of you. Okay, let's go to the next page. Chris, yeah, excuse me. I actually had to buy this pen on my own. There are some students who with their iPads, they have the Apple pen, or you can get like a not so expensive pen on Amazon. But this one, the pen and pad that I use, this one, it's a pen and pad. I got it on Amazon. I think it was like 25 or 30 bucks. Let's get number 3. So on the next page, number 3 says vertex. Now there's 2 types, right? We have the minimum and the maximum. So the axis of symmetry intersects a parabola at only one point, which is called the vertex. So we have a maximum. This is known as the highest point. So right here, we're going to write highest. And then the minimum is known as the lowest point. Okay. The vertex is where the range of values begin, listed as y is less than or equal to whatever number it is, or y is greater than or equal to whatever number it is. So look at this first example here. We have a parabola, and notice that the very lowest point here lands at this point. That's known as the vertex, or it's also known as the minimum because it's the lowest point. So let's find out what is the ordered pair for the vertex. So here we're at 0 and positive 2. So again, we said that this is the minimum. Okay, then we have the domain. So the domain, remember that the domain is what are the x values that this parabola covers, okay? So we know for sure it's at 0. And we can see that the parabola is also at 1, the x value of 1. And oh, look, it's close to here, right? So what are the x values that the domain, that this parabola covers? What do you guys think? So I see Chris wrote -1, 0, and +1. Okay, that is correct. However, do you notice how this parabola has arrows at the end? And those arrows mean that this parabola keeps going on and on and on and on and on forever, right? Which means it's also going to be 1, 2, 3. It's covering 4, 5. It's going to keep going on and on and on because that arrow is never ending. So if it's going to go on and on and on to the right and on and on to the left, then it's got to be all those numbers. So then what's the domain for this parabola? We're going to say all real numbers. Yeah, infinity. Yep. And we would write it as all real numbers. Now you could also write the symbol. You could write the symbol like this. Oh, thanks for letting me know. I'm actually recording from a different way, so it should be okay. So this symbol here is also known as all real numbers, okay? Okay, let's talk about the range. So the range are going to be all the y values. Okay, so notice here at the bottom, the parabola doesn't touch anything down here, but it does start here at the 2 and up, right? And remember those arrows mean it goes up, on and on and on and on forever? So it starts at the 2 and goes up. So then, because it's the range, we're going to say y and everything that's greater than that 2, right? So we're going to say y greater than or equal to 2. It's equal to it because it's touching the 2 value, okay? All right. Any other questions here so far? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here and